Welcome to Harris Hall for the June 13th edition of the regular Board of County Commissioners meeting. Welcome to Harris Hall and online. Ms. Mokrahysky, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great, thank you.
You are great, by all accounts. Do you have any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
Then we'll go directly into item 1A, which is a presentation of the colors by the Coast Guard Auxiliary Color Guard, the members of Flotilla number 52. Please stand as the colors are presented. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The purpose of the presentation of colors this morning is a declaration of water safety in Lane County. Every year, thousands of Lane County residents and visitors go boating and playing in Lane County's lakes, rivers, bays, and the ocean, a number that surged during the pandemic as more people sought peace outdoors. With summer now approaching, countless families again are drawn to the promise and possibility of time on the water. During National Safety Boating Week, we remind one another to be safe and responsible and to do all we can to prevent boating accidents and prepare for emergencies. Whether fishing, sailing, canoeing, kayaking, jet skiing, or motorboating, safe boating starts with planning ahead. A large percentage of Lane County households now own some kind of boat, and they should each make sure their vessel meets local and national safety standards. Lane County Sheriff's Office and Lane County Search and Rescue volunteers and staff have programs to examine boats for free and tell their owners how to improve safety. Free boating safety courses are available in all 50 states, and the Coast Guard Auxiliary and groups like America's Boating Club train people online and in person in boat handling, marine navigation, engine maintenance, weather prediction, and more. Simple things can be life-saving: life jackets, weather forecast maps, especially in unfamiliar areas, and emergency communications tools. Boating sober without alcohol or drugs is so important. And every boat operator should always wear their engine cutoff switch lanyard in order to automatically stop the boat if they are thrown into the water. Operating a boat is a serious thing, like driving a car. It demands attention and caution, even as it gives boaters a profound feeling of freedom and peace. This week, we thank the courageous members of Lane County Search and Rescue, as well as the United States Coast Guard and Auxiliary, along with the federal, state, tribal, and local partners who sacrifice so much to protect boaters and help rescue those in need at a moment's notice. We should honor their work by each doing our own part to keep life on the water safe. Based on our commitment to water safety in Lane County, I proclaim that June 2023 is Boating Safety Month. And with that, I'm going to step down to hand this proclamation to General Hoffman.
Retire the colors.
Thank you to the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Thank you, members. And General Hoffman?
Yes, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for caring about this and our people in Lane County and serving them the way you do. We appreciate it. And There are 26,000 of us across the United States, and we do all kinds of missions. Obviously, Color Guard is one of those. But basically, our focus is safe boating. And I know that, I'm not allowed to say this probably, but during the time we had a little financial issue in our country, and the Coast Guard was not under the Department of Defense, they were under Homeland Security, and they weren't being paid, that the heart of the community went out to those families, and good care was taken. But what we saw was the incidence of greater number of deaths and damage to property during that time. So we want to believe what we do is essential. And so thank you for this and the proclamation. I appreciate it very much.
And General Hoffman, I notice you're not wearing the uniform of a brigadier general in the U.S. Army. You're wearing a different uniform today.
I am, and I'm proud of it. It's the Coast Guard uniform, and when you join the auxiliary, it doesn't matter if you were a 4-star general, you start at the bottom and work your way up.
So when you're wearing that uniform, General Hoffman, you call me sir. Don't forget I said that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will give the members of the Color Guard a moment to retire from Harris Hall before we move into the agenda, Ms. Mokrajewski. And I'd like to state that General Hoffman and I, when General Hoffman was a major, we served in the 2nd Battalion of the 162nd Infantry. After reorganization, we had very few officers in that unit. He and I were 2 of them, and another one of those officers was someone whose name is very familiar to us. At the time, First Lieutenant Tom Egan was a member of Alpha Company, where I was in Alpha Company. Lieutenant Egan later became Major Egan, and we remember him with great sadness. And moving down the agenda, do we have, Mr. Mokrajewski, do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
And any emergency business?
No.
To the board? I'm seeing none. Then we'll go to item 4A, which is Order 2306-1301, in the matter of adopting the 2023-24 Lane County budget, making appropriations and imposing and categorizing taxes. And today, Ms. Mokrajewski, I will introduce your panel, which is Christine Moody, our budget manager. Ms. Moody, good to see you this morning with a smile on your face, because maybe you can breathe a sigh after this meeting. Ms. Mokrajewski.
Yes, thank you. Christine, I think I'll turn over to Christine. It's been a long process. This is the presumably the end of that process as the board adopts the budget today. You've had your public hearing. The budget committee has met. We've proposed the budget, so we've gone through all of those steps, and I'll turn it over to Christine just to add anything else that the board may need to know, and then, of course, if you have any questions or additional comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Farr, Commissioners. So, as noted, this is the final step in the process for the adoption of the 23-24 budget that starts on July 1st. So you do have in the information, and I just want to point out to anyone looking at it online, there's an attachment that describes all of the changes that are happening since the approved budget, which is what you had the public hearing on last week. So mainly just information that the departments know more now than they knew back in February when they submitted their budgets. So a lot of adjustments, technical or increases and changes. One thing I will note is that the board moved last week to return to the ONC Counties Association, and that amount has been added as well to the budget. So we don't need to do a budget action later on that piece. So if there's any questions on any of those changes, otherwise, you have the motion before you. It includes the additional local option levy that was passed in November for parks. So that's the one change in the taxes that are being categorized. And then the order does highlight that our budget will now be $1,096,225,049, and our FTE will be 2,040.09, just for those totals for your information.
I trust that number is not rounded. Very good. Then I'll look to the board for questions, comments, and/or a motion. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure that, as always, every year during budget time, I declare potential conflict of interest because there are funding mechanisms within the budget that are specific to St. Vincent de Paul. I'm related to the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul. I have recused myself from those individual motions, so I do not believe it is an actual declaration of a conflict of interest, and so I will continue to participate in this vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Further comments? Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate our volunteer Budget Committee members. As someone who served in that capacity in 2014, 15, and 16, I know it can be kind of bewildering. We have, particularly for new members, it's a large and complex budget. And I also know there are some folks who have served in that role who sometimes wonder, you know, what is the impact of that really? And I just really appreciate folks spending the time as volunteers to learn more and then being sort of ambassadors out into the community who can share about how thorough the process is, how integrous, and you learn a lot about Lane County Services and how we operate in serving in that role. And so just wanted to take a moment to appreciate our volunteer Budget Committee members.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. Further comments? Then I'll just state this, Ms. Moody, and I don't declare a potential conflict of interest because I've been advised that I do not need to. My son does work for Lane County. My son is a licensed, qualified behavioral and mental health professional, and he works for LCBH. But I've been advised that I do not need to declare on that, so I'm not declaring. So with that, do I have a motion? Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I'll move passage of the budget for fiscal year 23-24 as presented.
Second. Moved by Commissioner Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Lovell. That is Order 2306-1301, the 2023-24 budget. Discussion to the motion? I see no discussion. Then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Moody, for a year of work that led up to this moment in time, and now take a vacation. You know.
Before starting on
Thank you to your
next
staff.
Before starting on Auxiliary 1, right? Then we'll move down the agenda to public comments. For those who are here present in Harris Hall to provide public comments, I'll call your name, step to the microphone, you'll give them 3 minutes to speak. Keep an eye on the clock on the wall to my left, which will be directly in front of you. It'll signal 3 minutes, counting down. At 30 seconds, there will be a audible note that gives you a 30-second warning. After 3 minutes, I will ask you to conclude, and we'll move along to the next speaker. For those of you who are online, keep an eye on the clock, which is on your, which will be on your computer screen. Also, you have an option online to be live on camera or not live on camera. You can personally exercise that option. You'll also be given 3 minutes to speak with an audible alarm at 30 seconds. This morning, we have no one signed up to speak in Harris Hall. After we conclude online speaking, I'll ask if there is anyone in Harris Hall who does wish to speak in testimony to the Board of County Commissioners this morning. Ms. Jones, do we have an online queue?
Thank you, Chair Farr. Yes, we do. I will now switch to the online queue. If you have signed up to give public comments at this meeting, please raise your virtual hand, and I will call upon you in the order that I see your hands raised. Our first speaker will be Chris McAllister. Chris, I'm going to unmute your microphone and ask you if you would like to be on camera. Chris,
yes,
would you like
please.
to be? Okay, one moment. I'm going to change your mode, and you will see a button, I believe, that will appear that will ask you to turn on your camera and become a presenter. There we go. We can see you, and you may begin your public comment.
Thank you. You're doing better than me. I cannot see myself. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Chris McAllister, and I come to you as a Springfielder. We in Springfield are a smaller community inside the shadow of Eugene, and much like the services that we seek get overshadowed by the greater need of our county seat, so do the unhoused who represent our populations inside our borders. Often we do a first come, first serve county-wide endeavor with specializations towards rural communities or the greatest needs inside our county seat, which means that often Springfielders are streamlined and then forgotten. We have a growing amount of seniors who have fallen out of nursing homes, who've fallen out of assisted living, and who are not seen against the backdrop of 3,000. When you have 514 people recognized by the Homeless by Name list, yet we cannot guarantee that there are even 5 beds set aside in the county infrastructure not even 6, 1 for every ward, then we are losing the battle for Springfield's people. We are represented by 1/5 of this body, yet we do not have 1/5 of the beds. We do not have even 1/3 or 1/8 of the services. And Springfield is a desert when it comes to supports for its unhoused who are not children or people with children. I, as a former homeless youth in this community, recognize the needs for those types of services. And I would not be here today if it wasn't for people like organizations who currently serve the city of Springfield, trying without extra supports, without extra efforts. So I implore you, please consider Springfield as not only a revenue stream, but also as a focus of need. After COVID, things did not get better for those who serve Springfield. We are serving harder to serve populations in our Egan with fewer volunteers. Our people are being paid less than minimum wage after everything irons out with all the requirements to serve, but not the supports. I implore you to please remember that we are losing people faster than the other counties because the services are not here. Our addicts are mistreated by our police, and there is no place for our people to go to get clean and to stay clean because one size does not fit all. The giant models are of the past. We need to have smaller, more nuanced assignments. We need to have allocations in our major projects to make sure that all of Lane County is represented. As a lifelong Springfielder who was born here and will likely die here, I ask that you invest in our community like we invest in you. I am honored to serve with you and look forward to seeing where things go next. Please remember Springfield. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment, Mr. McAllister. I will now call on Shauna Lee, followed by Patrick Fay. Shauna, I will unmute your microphone. Will you please let me know if you would like to be on camera?
I would like to not be on camera, thank you.
Okay, you may begin your public comment.
I am here today to speak regarding the situation in Glenwood. The tax lot is 1655, 1657 Mississippi Avenue. I'm a neighbor, and since approximately October 2023, that house has been abandoned, and it's increasingly deteriorated and become a hotbed of crime, and has also become a large homeless. After a lengthy probate process, Valerie Coleman with Assessment and Taxation has informed me that the county will be foreclosing as of June 9th. However, she has also said it will be 2 years before the county can or will legally do anything with the property. However, the property itself is not smooth, full of drug use, open air prostitution, and as LCSO has told me, people with active warrants go there to hide because they know that it's a safe house. There are constantly squad cars from SPD, Springfield Police, and Lane County Sheriff outside of this house on a regular basis, and it's just absolute hell to live here. If you live on the street, it's a very secluded area. It's back towards the train tracks, in a forested area, and so there's not a lot of public visibility or public oversight. There have been assaults on this property in plain day in the middle of the street. Many unleashed aggressive dog pit bulls, animal controls come. Aaron's done you. Bureau of Land Management, Green County has brought in hazmat crews, and there have been large RV fires. Daisy, I also did a special if you Google Glenwood residents about a property. There's just large and huge piles of trash. I mean, we're talking top shop levels of trash, mattresses, couches, garbage. There's no sewage, so there's the tree they built. We've had human feces dumped into our Santa pack bins, and there's in the yard and the street, and we're worried that rats will. So it's been very challenging to live like this. And really, we need to know what Lane County plans on doing over the next 2 years with the property, because here's waiting out 2 years, not okay. We deserve better. There's a 4J bus stop that drops children off right in front of that homeless camp. It's a problem. There are children in this neighborhood, and they deserve better. And Glenwood deserves better. And Glenwood is not being forgotten just because it's really kind of not Springfield, kind of not the community. And, we deserve better, and this house has to be addressed. And it's growing and it's spreading, and word of mouth is coming. You can do whatever you want there. And so then that tax lot is 1657 Mississippi Avenue in Denver.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. And I'm going to advise you that your audio was a little bit muddled as we were hearing it, and I'm not sure if we received a good recording of your audio, so I'm going to invite you to please submit your testimony in writing if you can, and you can email that to Lane County, and we can follow up with an email address for you to send that to, but please do that if it is inside your capability. Please continue, Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Chair Farr. We now have Patrick Fay. Patrick, I will unmute your microphone and ask if you would like me to unmute or if you would like to be on camera.
I would like to be on camera, yes, please.
Okay, one moment. You should have received a request to become a panelist and turn your camera on. There you are.
You should have me with visual and audio.
Yep, we see you. You may begin your public comment.
All right, good morning, Lane County Commission. Perhaps some of you know me. I know my neighbor, Commissioner Seneca does. I come before the commission today to try to make you aware of how cumbersome the permitting process is to what we're trying to do out here and to all residents of Lane County. I am trying to start a brewery out here that's a value-added product. I can assure you our business, value-added product business. I can assure you what we don't grow out here on the trees is money. But if I can take what we do grow and turn it into something that people can put in their face, I can make money. I have not received a paycheck since I've come here to try to save the family farm. This will be our 5th season. I'm trying to sustain a way of life out here. Lane County has had my farm brewery permit for almost 1.5 years now, and we're not building anything. We're installing a tiny little brew house in our big red barn, which has been here since before 1902 when the family got here. I don't know what they're dwelling on. And certainly no one from Lane County Land Management has bothered to come out and see the lay of the land and see what we're doing. The Lane County Land Management has been a really interesting entity to deal with. I was advised to file an agritourism permit. That doesn't exist. You got to file it under a general use permit. I put a sample of that in the email I gave to the board this morning before this meeting. It's 160 pages under the general use permit. My little variance for the farm brewery that I had to do cost me $6,000 I don't have. I can only imagine what a 160-page general use permit would cost. I find the processes here in Lane County, and particularly at Lane County Land Management, economically oppressive. The only people that can accomplish these things are big businesses. The only people that can do a turnkey brick and mortar restaurant in all of Oregon are things like King Estate. I do more farm to table at my little walk-up mobile food truck in Lane County at Hensy's here than most restaurants do, and particularly the big ones, you know. And it's just absurd that I'm sitting here waiting, paying $2,000 a month on a bond that I raised via the community, trying to monetize what we do out here and that celebrates Oregon agriculture. I want to make a living. I just want to sustain this farm's way of life. Help me out.
Thank you for your public comment. I do show we have had an additional person sign up for an attendee. If you would like to give public comment right now, please raise your virtual hand and I will call on you. There we go. Amy Pinkus, would you like to be on camera?
Yes, please.
Amy? Okay, I will do over and you will get a request to join. Amy, I see that you've joined, but you need to unmute your microphone and your camera.
Hey. Got them
There we
both
go.
unmuted. Thank you.
You may begin your public comment.
Thank you. Commissioners, thanks so much for taking my public testimony. I'm calling about the NIMKISH rule that has been upheld by the Oregon Court of Appeals, which I understand that you may be discussing at some point today. The rules establish that only properties 80 acres or more can have a home built on them. Our property in Deadwood, 5.5 acres, which I've owned since 1983, has fallen under the 80-acre rule. I could not keep wildlife off that property if I tried, unless I built a 20-foot fence and surrounded the property and grew marijuana inside of it, which would be perfectly legal. But with the NIMKISH rule, I cannot build one single home, which is all we'd like to do on our property. We believe that this is a variation or perhaps a complication of equal protection under the law, because the NIMKISH rule was not enforced for many, many years, and now it is. And it's a discrimination against small landowners, because only people with 80 acres or more could buy and sell property and build on it. Additionally, really, honestly, the big game rule should be for properties that are 80 acres or more rather than 80 acres or less, because the wildlife needs more land rather than less land. We've had woodland template test criteria approval twice on our property, and yet it's been hung up this last time because of the NIMKISH rule. It's been explained to me that only that elk will come up and eat roses off of a deck. One home on 5 acres is not going to affect wildlife on our property. I just want to say that this feels really kind of capricious and undeniably discriminatory, because there's many, many people who have built on 5 acres, including the people who are on the board of Lane Land Watch. Whatever their initial intention was in protecting large logging holdings and forest holdings from being turned into suburbs, does not relate properly to a single home on 5 acres. So although we respect what they did initially, they no longer have our respect. We could build a barn on our property, but we could not build a house on our property. It literally makes no sense. If you have an opportunity to change this rule and to give 5-acre landholders minimum a opportunity to build, provide more tax base, provide homes for people, we'd be very, very grateful for your consideration. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your public comment. Chair Farr, at this time I have no one else online for public comment, so I'll return the meeting back to you.
And thank you, Ms. Jones, for handling the online queue. And I'll mention to you, Mr. McAllister, you seem to have read a written statement. Please, if you so desire, submit that written statement as a part of the record for today. At this point, I'll conclude the online discussion and look around Harris Hall to see if anyone who did not sign up initially for comment to the Board of County Commissioners would like to step forward and testify before the Board of County Commissioners. Anyone wishing to testify, please step forward, state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Keep an eye on the clock on the wall, and you'll receive a 30-second notice when there's 30 seconds left in your testimony.
Hello, I identify as a table.
Say again, please.
I identify as a table.
A table.
Yes. Sturdy, strong, flat, can hold stuff. Carries things. I'd just like to reiterate that people are still wearing masks, and Krieger went to a Saturday market without a mask on when masks were supposed to be mandated. I was forced to wear a mask for several years as a servant. And I want to reiterate that that's not gone away, that we'll never forget. And Krieger over here, she online is promoting pharma and promoting shots that have destroyed lives, destroyed children's lives, destroyed people's lives. And this will never, ever, ever go away. We'll never, ever forget the Nazism, the pain, and the evilness that has been perpetrated upon the people. And this will never, ever, ever go away. One of my friends is in prison right now for 4 years because she didn't want to wear a mask. And she went into a place and she was accosted and then charged with theft of a bat because the bat was wielded upon her. That's not okay. And nobody's gonna forget this. You don't walk away from something like that. You don't walk away from destroying people's lives and then not even mention how you've destroyed people's lives like this because you thought you were okay, or because you were in the in crowd, because you're transgender, or because you're gay, or because of whatever in Pride Month. That doesn't go away. And I really need, if you want this to stop, if you want some healing, you need to address this. You need to, not just you, but all of the so-called progressives and the wokeism that has come across this country and this county. You need to address it. And you need to make awareness of it and come to terms with it. The Trump derangement syndrome, the Kennedyism. Kennedy is a Democrat presidential nomination, and you understand what's going on. You understand the problems and the corporatocracy that you've committed to, and you need to come to terms with it. Everybody on this board does. And why is it that we have all this construction out here
Thank you, Mr. Table. Please summarize.
Yeah, whatever.
Thank you for your testimony to the entire Board of County Commissioners. Any further testimony from anyone present in Harris Hall? I see none. Then I will conclude public testimony and open the mic to comments and/or remonstrances from the Board of County Commissioners. I'll look around. Commissioner Lovell.
Chair, thank you. Thank you all for your public testimony online. I'm always excited to hear public testimony in the process of government. Last night I was at a parks meeting and there were some folks there testifying on Zumwalt Park and the way we use that. 45 people in a room the size of my living room, and I was totally thrilled. So thank you again for your public testimony. We'll make one comment on Shauna Lee's issue, the one that we had a hard time with the audio. She's talking about a property in Glenwood at 1655 Mississippi Avenue. I've been there personally myself a few times and looked at it and take pictures and talked to folks that were there. Yeah, it's a mess, and I think what we're doing to try to get that resolved, we're working on that. There has been a problem with that property as the owner has died and his beneficiary has since passed. So there's some issues about getting onto the property to clean it up. But I had a meeting with Springfield's mayor yesterday, and one of the ideas put forward besides the nuisance issues that we could use, or nuisance money we can use, they also have some, is that it's just an IGA agreement, an intergovernmental arrangement agreement between Springfield and Lane County as if to who would enforce that or regulate that. So I think that's something that we need to talk about maybe with staff or as a board, because Glenwood's kind of in that no man's land a little bit until we annex it into the city of Springfield. But we do need to address this problem. It's dangerous for that neighborhood. The people that are in there that are on drugs, like she said, are isolated from the street. Nobody sees them, and so they kind of have a run of the place. So I'd like to keep our attention on that if we could and help where we can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. Further remonstrances and/or comments? Commissioner Senega.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks for all the public comment. And Patrick Fay, Hensey Farms has been a staple in our small communities. And I really would like to see us do what we can to help him diversify, really. I mean, they're a small farm and they need to do something for additional income. My daughters still talk about the homemade lemonade you made them and how great that was. And I mean, those are the farm to table. It's not going anywhere. It's what everybody wants. Let's lean into it. Let's try and help. So keep fighting the fight, Patrick. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Seneca. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I also appreciate those who testified today. I wanted to speak also to Patrick Fay, because we've exchanged some emails, and I'm a strong supporter of agritourism. I know that Commissioner Seneca and myself have testified at the state level for bills to help alleviate some of those land use barriers in order to help facilitate agritourism. I'm not sure where that's at right now in the legislature. I think it too is stuck. But I still carry hope that we will be able to somehow move the needle on some of the land use regulations. It's just so important for people to know where their food comes from. And agritourism is a prime example of educating our public, especially our children, on where food comes from and be able to diversify some of our economy. And of course, we have the farmers market across the road, but people really need to come out to the rural areas and see what it's like, see what can be done. And so I will continue to share Commissioner Seneca's support surrounding this and continue to bring it up with our state legislature.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just add my voice to the chorus and thank Patrick Fay for calling in with his future voter on his lap. That was great. Thank you. Patrick and I spoke several times in my first year in office, and I'm also a strong supporter of the Farm Cafe bill up in Salem, which is what we need here at the county for our land use people to grant the permit that he's seeking. And while I'm not a rural commissioner, I do love my locally grown produce, and as someone who's got a 3 decades long nonprofit career prior to being in office working on local food security and supporting regional food systems, it's critically important that we support our local food producers, not only to bring that economic power to the local community, but to keep that profession of small family farms alive. It's really important as farmland gets paved over for development or bought up in small parcels to create larger agricultural industries that do not steward the land in the same way or give back to the local economy in the same way that small family farms do. It's so important. So I know those of us here on the board fully support attempting passage of the Farm Cafe bill in Salem, which is sort of a pilot bill specifically created for Lane County's small farmers to be able to do just this kind of thing and create on-farm value-added enterprises and event spaces. And it's a huge frustration of all of ours. So Patrick, I think you have, I don't want to speak for all 4 of my colleagues, but I'm pretty sure you have support from all 4 of us, and we're working hard to get the legislature to get on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. That kind of sounds like a agenda team request in the making to me. We'll see what happens later, perhaps. And thank you to the speakers today. I'd like to thank Ms. Pincus. Thank you for your correspondence yesterday. I think that led to your testimony today. Thank you for being with us. Just a couple of things, Mr. Mokrowski. I'll point out, Commissioner Buck kind of beat me to this, but right across the street, we have Farmers Market, which is opening up and open for business today. So anybody who needs some fresh produce, they can come right down here to Harris Hall. Right across the street, Farmers Market is operating today. I got a message yesterday from Oren Schumacher from Lane County Public Works, who reminded me of a couple of things. He reminded me that both Western and Eastern Lane County are now officially in fire season level 1 for all lands regulated under the authority of the Oregon Department of Forestry. Now that makes a big difference to many of the people who work in our Public Works Department, members of the Local 626 and others, who actually perform maintenance on our streets, and maintenance in particular on the vegetation along the sides of our street. We're assured year after year that they do that in the most safe manner possible. It's designed to not only help prevent dry fires from the roadside, but also to improve visual lines of sight for people coming in and out of driveways and going around corners. It's essential work that continues through the summer. And we are assured every year, Mr. Mokrajewski, that the people who are performing the work on the roadsides have the first line of fire suppression available to them, the first line of fire communication, and they do it in a very, very safe manner. So if you have a chance to see someone, and they're all over the county at most days of the, well, quite often 7 days of the week right now, performing maintenance on our roads and our roadsides, give them a toot. Say howdy. They are doing it in a very safe fashion. They're doing it to make us safer on the roads. So, Mr. Shoemaker, thank you very much for reminding me of that. And I'd like to also say that, you know, Mr. McAllister, you provided testimony regarding the houselessness situation in Lane County, and you suggested that it is elevated in Lane County compared to some other counties in some areas. I hear you and I talk quite often about it. You talk with just about, I believe, every single county commissioner that's sitting up here. We hear you loud and clear, and we hear your work loud and clear. You know, as well as we do, that our local nonprofits provide essential services through support by the Board of County Commissioners. They provide essential services not only in housing and homelessness, but for people who remain in houselessness situations. And we continue to try to elevate our attention to detail regarding the houseless people in Lane County. Your work has been instrumental in guiding us for many years now. Since you, Mr. McAllister, joined the Poverty and Homelessness Board about 9 years ago at this point in time, you've been a loud voice. Continue with that loud voice. Later on, during items from at the end of the day, I have a statement regarding our nonprofits that I'm going to read during the items from the council at the end of commission at the end of the day. So with that, any further remonstrances and/or comments? I am seeing none. Then we'll move down our agenda, Mr. Mokrajewski. We have before us a consent calendar. The consent calendars will be considered in a single motion by the Board of County Commissioners. If any single item had been had needed extra discussion, or that the consent calendar does not allow for, it would have been pulled from the consent calendar for that discussion, or in case any commissioner needed to recuse for one reason or another from an item on the consent calendar. That is not the case with all the items on the consent calendar. If you wish to view the items to see everything that the Board of County Commissioners has seen in making this decision today, you can click View Item online. With that, do I have a motion? Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I move approval of the consent calendar for Tuesday, June 13th, 2023.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck, the consent calendar for June 13th, 2023. Discussion to the motion? I am seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. And down the agenda, County Council, your B item has a 10 o'clock time certain, but your A item can last for 17 minutes if you wish.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Unfortunately, I'm not sure I can fill 17 minutes because today is a no news is good news type of day. No pressing business to address with you today or new announcements. So unfortunately, I don't have much. And I'm still working on my joke-telling techniques. I have reached out to Ms. Lisa Lacey to find out whether she can join us a little bit early, as well as our guest from Brown & Brown, and I'm waiting to hear back. But
Thank you very much. Then we'll reassemble with you for the consent calendar, Ms. Pettigrew. Thank you for what you have so far. A quick hint, if I may, with the indulgence of the board. Hey Siri, tell me a joke.
Be careful.
Oh, she's not reading it out loud. A teacher asks a student, if I give you 4 cats today and then 2 tomorrow, how many cats would you have? The student answers 7. That's wrong, says the teacher. No, protests the student, you're wrong. The teacher sighs and explains 4 plus 2 is 6. The student replies, yes, but I've already got a cat. See, it's easy, Ms. Pettigrew. It's easy.
And it's cats.
well played, Chair.
So now, lesson learned. We'll move down the agenda, Mr. Mokrajewski, to County Administration. If you have anything that you'd like to add before we get to our 10 o'clock time certain.
I do. 14 minutes. See what we can do here. I'll talk slow. We do, today is E+28, so 28 days since election date. This will be the last update on our elections process. So I have an update from our county clerk, Dina Dawson, and her team. The third and final logic and accuracy test was conducted yesterday after running the final ballots and just before the election was certified. The final test produced the expected results and matched the results from the first two public tests. Final election results are available on the elections website now. The election office is busy coordinating with districts to share abstracts of the election and produce certificates of election to winning candidates. The returns dashboard reflects final ballot returns for the election, and the live stream was terminated yesterday after the election was certified. The live stream will begin again when ballots are delivered for the next election. So that's your final election update for this election cycle. And I just want to thank Dina Dawson, our county clerk, and her staff for their professionalism and continued commitment to transparency in our elections process. They're doing great work there. Gosh, you want to talk about what I'm going to have for lunch today, or?
Peanut butter and jelly, it's what you have every day.
You know me well, yeah. I just was looking for other particular things. Happy to, if there are any assignments that the board is interested in hearing an update from. I will just note that had a meeting this morning with our sheriff, district attorney, community justice rehabilitation services director, and health and human services director, as well as some other staff, to advance one of the board's assignments around the conversation of longer term solutions to our public safety funding challenges that we have here in Lane County. So we're beginning that work.
Very well, then I'm going to look around the board and see if there's any comments or response to either council or to the administrator. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question to our administrator. I know it's very early in just the initial convening in response to the assignment around long-term plans for public safety and funding and behavioral health, but if you would just, one, keep us apprised, which I know you will anyway, but particularly when and if there are opportunities for members of the community who either have been working in those areas and or have organized groups that are paying really close attention, have reached out to me, both in the course of the election cycle when we were working to pass the levy and since, saying now what and what are we going to do. Particularly there are a couple of organized groups, including some neighborhood associations that would very much like to engage and give input and hear what's happening. So perhaps as part of your conversations, you can also talk about what is the process for letting the public know, not just this Board of Commissioners and the public that tunes into our meetings, but more broadly, or if there's thought about convening any kind of listening sessions or anything like that to start getting ideas and support from the public. That would be great.
Certainly will. Paul Solomon, who you all know as now the executive director of sponsors and the vice chair of the Public Safety Coordinating Council, participated in that discussion as well. So we are trying to include folks in addition to our elected and appointed public safety officials. And there was discussion about a 2005 report, a consultant report that was done that looked at some of these topics. So our intent today really was just to sort of begin the framing of the that discussion and to look at sort of laying the foundation for what that conversation can be going forward. So a lot of work ahead.
Anything else? Then we can enter into a recess until the 10 o'clock time certain. But first, hey Siri, tell me a joke about attorneys.
I found this on the web.
Uh-oh.
Oh. Oh, I'm not going to say it. Normally she reads the joke out loud to me, so we'll dispense of that. But it is that easy. It said 100 jokes about lawyers on the web. So with that, then, with the indulgence of the board, we can enter into a short recess until our 10 a.m. time certain. We'll reconvene at 10 a.m. Commissioners' regular Tuesday meeting. Today is Tuesday, June the 13th, and we are reconvening for our 10 a.m. time certain. And today, our 10 a.m. time certain is Order 23-06-13-03 in the matter of approving renewal of purchase insurance policies and delegating authority to the risk manager and to execute renewal documents. And this morning, we have with us Erin Pettigrew, County Counsel, and Lisa Lacey, who's our risk manager. But I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Pettigrew, to introduce your panel, please.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Erin Pettigrew, County Counsel. I am joined today by Lisa Lacey, our risk manager, as well as Ron Cutter from Brown & Brown, which is our brokerage firm. They're here today to talk to you about our renewal process, to give you a little background into the work that goes into that, and to discuss the order that would delegate authority to Ms. Lisa Lacey to finally execute those contracts within the timeline allowed. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Lisa.
Most of the county's purchased insurance policies expired July 1st, and so since the end of January, staff has been collecting data to give to Brown & Brown so they can shop for proposals for us. And Ron is our account executive, and he's here this morning to give you a little background, talk about renewal, and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Lacey, and good to see you again, Mr. Cutter. I saw you just last Friday when you made a similar presentation to Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission.
Yes, that's correct. Good to see you again, and thanks for having me here today. So I am with Brown & Brown. My area of practice is governmental, so I do almost exclusively cities, counties, school districts, special districts in the state of Oregon in terms of insurance. And so we've been working with Lane County for a number of years. Usually in this meeting, we're going through a proposal format and we're talking about renewing your lines of coverage and what the premiums were and what the premiums are going to be and any coverage changes that may be occurring. Today, we do not have that information yet. It is the 13th of June and it's still being put together. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and this is the what I would classify as hardest insurance market that I've ever experienced in my career. A hard market is characterized by a couple of things. Number one, it's increasing rates, and number two, it's reduced capacity. So capacity being the amount that insurers are willing to provide you in terms of limits or coverages. And so it's been a real battle. As Chair Farr will attest to, I had similar comments last week at MWMC. We were still putting the final numbers together for them. Likewise for you. So the lines of coverage that we're renewing for July 1 include your property coverages, so insuring your buildings and your contents, your liability coverages. The county is self-insured. You have $1 million self-insured retention. And then from there, we have excess coverage above your retention. And it's currently 4 different carriers that are giving us $5 million chunks of liability coverage. We have secured the first layer. The next layers should be coming in within the next couple days. We're still negotiating there. And then your crime coverage and your excess workers' compensation coverage, similar to liability on your work comp, you're self-insured, so you retain up to a certain level, and then we're buying excess coverage above that. The 2 areas where we're having difficulty, where it's very hard, are property and then your excess liability. In the property lines, that's couple things going on. Number one, in the industry, we've seen significant losses, significant insured losses, those being hurricanes, flooding, wildfires in the last several years. So the insurance industry has taken a lot of property losses. So when that happens, the industry starts increasing rates, and we're seeing that. The other thing that's happening is a problem that the industry has known we've had for a while, but we've just kind of kicked the can down the road, is a problem with your values. So when I say you, I mean I'm talking about commercial insurance buyers. So the values you have on your buildings. And it's been pretty widely known that the limits that you're carrying for your buildings are probably somewhere around 65 or 70% of where they should be. So to actually replace a building that you've got scheduled for $5 million is probably going to cost closer to $6 or $7 million. So we've been able to, the last number of years, just trend your property values, say 2%. You know, your total insured values for property are just under $500 million. So that goes up, you know, maybe 2% a year. And we've just sort of, you know, the analogy is kicking the can down the road a little bit. And so now we have this inflationary period that we're in. And so insurance companies as a whole are saying, oh my gosh, we've got a real problem here because we got, you know, CPI, you know, just general inflation going up, but more specifically, the cost of construction really going up. And so that coupled with, we're in a starting place of probably 65, 70% of values of where we should have been. Insurers are demanding that insurance buyers increase your values. So when your values go up and your rates go up, it's, you know, somewhat of a double whammy. So we are experiencing that now. Your current property carrier is Travelers. Travelers has, well, let me back up. It's been a while since the county has done a property appraisal, and that needs to be done. And so that was teed up to do pre-COVID, and, you know, when that happened, you know, everything kind of went off the rails, and so that hasn't happened yet. So it's Travelers is telling us, hey, listen, you know, we need to increase these property values, you know, upwards of 20% because they believe your values are too low. And so we're negotiating with them, and one of the things we're saying is, hey, if we commit to an appraisal be done between now and your next renewal, can we mitigate that that property value increase? And I think we have a commitment from them just as of about an hour ago. I think, you know, we're going to be able to get agreement on that. So we're working on that, but it's important that the county does retain an appraiser to go out and inspect your buildings and determine what the replacement value of these buildings are. Here's what I expect is your values are going to go up. I mean, we're probably undervalued. So if your values go up, even if the rate stays the same, premium's going up. So we're going to be trying to massage that over the next, you know, first goal is get coverage in place by July 1, and then massage this value issue over the next 12 months and, you know, mitigate those increases, premium increase as much as possible. And then on the liability lines, you know, you're insuring your police, you're insuring, you know, your jail. We're seeing just in the industry significant losses. There's a real scrutiny on policing. You know, losses are happening in jails pretty regularly that are just, you know, when you have a jail fatality, that's going to cost some money. And those are happening. So, you know, dealing with that and dealing with the capacity issues in that excess market where insurers are saying, you know, we're done insuring this exposure. We're going to go insure something different. So it's a struggle. We're going to get everything put together and you know, mitigate the premium increases. But it's this is one of the it is the toughest renewal season I've had in my 20+ years of doing this. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Scudder, for the presentation. And Ms. Lacey, anything you'd like to add before we go to questions?
Yep.
And I'd like to just start out, Ron, by applauding you for the work that you do, not just for Lane County, but for so many different entities in Lane County, making sure that we do get the best opportunity for the best, I'm not going to say value, but the best effectiveness on risk management that we can possibly have. And you've done it for years, so thank you very much for that. I'll turn to the board for questions or comments. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I believe it is the first time that I've been asked to approve an order for insurance without knowing the costs. That's makes me pause, right? Because we will be saying to you, go ahead, because we need to make some kind of authority for you to sign some paperwork come before July 1st, so we're covered. and I trust you. I know that you will make the best decision on our behalf with the rates that you're going to be provided. It is a lot of money, so perhaps a follow-up with us about what the result is so that we know what's actually in place on July 1st. And I think my question maybe to you and for council is, we've had this excess casualty insurance up to $20 million, specifically came about due to a case at Health and Human Services. And there has been updates in that case where it feels like that risk exposure may not be quite that high anymore, although it's never the end game when things are still in litigation. And if you feel we need to keep that in place for a bit longer to be conservative in our approach in order to ensure that the people's tax dollars are going to be used in the most prudent manner should something come up? Or do you believe it's time that we consider maybe a smaller excess policy if indeed an insurance provider is even willing to give an excess policy provision to the county?
I think it all depends on the board's appetite for risk. There is no limit in federal court, so we could still have something come up in the future. And with some of the programs that are coming up, there is a greater exposure for an incident to happen. It's a guess.
I appreciate that. You're right. It is a guess. It's also in the last calendar year, $672,000 in risk exposure that we spent. I would love to be able to minimize that as much as possible so tax dollars can go to more services within the county and to folks. And so I guess I'm not sure where I'm at on that either. And maybe we need a little bit more time to really fully consider that over this next policy year. If we even get an offer for one, and if it becomes exceedingly expensive to have that and they offer some smaller coverage, say half, 10 million or something, and what price is that? Is that something we should really consider and come back to this body and say, okay, what do we want to do here, given the short timeline between now and July 1st?
So a couple comments on maybe context and then expectations. The context piece, we work with, I want to say it's 11 counties or so in Oregon, might be 12. And so the range of what counties are purchasing in terms of excess limits or limits in general range from 10 to 20. So you guys are currently at 20 million above your self-insured retention. So you're purchasing the most. So I think the conversation of, do we need 20? Can we go with 15 is a good conversation to have. That 5X of 15, we call it, that last layer of 5 costs you about $100,000. So, that's sort of some context, some expectation is, we're expecting about a 20% increase is what, we're seeing. So, if you're looking at between $650,000 and $700,000 for the current program, add 20% to that for the upcoming year. So if you could say, okay, we're rather than renewing the full 20, we're going to take 15 and perhaps save 100 to 120,000. I think that's a very good conversation to have. As an insurance person and a risk person, I am always very hesitant to recommend lesser limits for obvious reasons. I mean, if you have a big claim, then it's like, well, our insurance agent said we could take lesser limits, so that's a tough conversation to have, but I think it's one certainly worth considering.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. I'll ask a quick follow-up question to that, if I may. Timing on that, is that something that we would time for the next year's renewal, or is there time to consider that for this year's renewal?
Could do it for this year. Yeah.
Very good. Then I'll look to you, Ms. Lacey, to see, we have $20 million. Is there a particular reason we went with the higher number that you're aware of?
I believe it was that case.
Very good. Then I'll look for a further comment and see if this is something we wish to entertain. Commissioner Buck, thank you. Further comments from the board? Commissioner Lovell.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I just had just a quick question, and maybe this is out of topic or out of the realm here. When you talk about doing an appraiser or an appraisal for all of our roster of buildings, how many buildings do we have just off the cuff? I don't recall.
Typically, how we do those is we recommend you appraise every building that has a value of $1 million or more. So, you're not doing your full schedule. 'Cause,
Gotcha.
yeah, you have, I don't know. Yeah, I was gonna say 70. Yeah, it's a lot of structures. So we can minimize that and go, and get the meaningful data by just looking at buildings $1 million or more.
Is that something that I'm thinking to myself, when we develop, we have a full appraisal and the guy brings us a 60-page report. Is that sort of depth that you're after? So that would be somebody that we would hire externally, or is that somebody in tax and assessment that we could use to do that with?
I'm working with Jim Cheney. He has another project going on with a vendor, and he felt that they could tack that on. I don't think it would be quite as in-depth as 80 pages, but it would still give us a ballpark value of the buildings.
And then our timeline for next year, that would have to be done in the next year. And that would be probably, I'm just poking at numbers, I'd like 15 buildings we're talking about of our 70?
I'm not even sure that many.
Yeah, okay, all right, well, that's an achievable goal. To me, it just seemed like really big. So now it's got a little more compartmentalization, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So it doesn't include the pump house at Kemp Lane then?
Exactly.
Because I was trying to add up all these buildings. Very good. So that's something that we'd look at. I believe, Ms. Lacey, is it already slated? It sounds like it's already slated for that review, and that Mr. Cheney is working on that.
We need to revive it.
Very good. Very good. Do you need an order from the board to do that, or is that something you'll do internally?
No, he's going to tack it onto the already existing project. I would like to add, we went up to 20 million after that incident, and it would not have covered that incident. It was for any future incidents.
Serious consideration. We'll come to the second round in a second. If anybody else in the first round? I was prepared for the 14 to 20% that you're talking about, Mr. Curtis, since I did hear it last Friday, and you got the nod and go ahead from the commission. So, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. That case is not completely settled. So, that does give me pause of whether now is the right time to discuss moving it down to a lower level. But I think I'm prepared to approve the order as is in order to make sure that you can get the coverage you need at the timing that you need us to be covered by. But perhaps a follow-up as to what the coverage turns out to be, and if there are options in the future about the excess coverage, what those options are, and we can reconsider it at a later date.
And we could go years without an incident, but one incident would make us
Yes.
very happy that we continued. So it sounds as though that we're going to look to approve the contract, or excuse me, the order as is, and then in the next year, take a look at the 15 or 20 or other number as far as the excess is concerned. Okay, very good. Any further comments? Then we do have before us an order, which is 230613-03, and I'll call for a motion. Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I'll move approval of Order 230613-03 in the matter of approving renewal of purchased insurance policies and delegating authority to the risk manager to execute renewal documents.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck, Order 230613-03. The entire text of this order is found on today's agenda item. Click View Item, and it'll give you the entire text, which summarizes which includes what Commissioner Buck summarized regarding kind of passing an order without a number on it, which makes anybody nervous, but with the level of trust that we have with you and your agency, Mr. Cutter, I don't see a risk, Ms. Lacey. So Any discussion to the motion? Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, we are down next week, which is the 20th, and then we have the 27th. So that's our last meeting before the new fiscal year. Will we have a number at that point? Is that something we could just come back and look at on the 27th, just to kind of close the loop?
Excellent.
Do you need that as an assignment, or can we just consider that, sort of, would that be part of council's update?
I'm happy to bring it with announcements, Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you.
That'll work perfectly. Thank you. Further discussion? Then I'll call for the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Mr. Cutter, see you in, what, 2 or 3 days?
Yeah, we're on a roll
string,
here, right?
yeah. Let's go see an M's game. How's that sound? All right. Well, Mr. Mokrowski, we've already had administration announcements. We have no reason for executive session this morning or this afternoon for that matter, and no other business for this morning's agenda. So with that, in a rare early stroke of the gavel, we are recessed until 1:30 p.m.